Born of two movements, traditional powwow and Bronx street culture, Leonard Harmon is a creator who doesn't just blend art forms, he builds bridges between them. From woodland-style powwow dancing to breakbeats, from ancestral craftwork to mixed media on canvas, Leonard's work pulses with the rhythm of resistance, joy, and cultural resilience. Today on Beyond the Art, we step into his world where legacy moves and culture evolves. We are deeply grateful to the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture for their generous support and contributions to making this episode possible, and for their commitment to uplifting Indigenous artists and traditions. This is Beyond the Art. Well, welcome to the show, Leonard. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. Thank you for taking the time and joining us. We much appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show.
Well, let's begin with your roots. What does it mean for you to carry your family's creative legacy forward through your work?
I think it really stems from my uncle's work and my family's work. I come from a long line of artists. My grandfather's brother used to carve duck decoys. And I think it kind of starts with there, because when growing up as a kid in our community in Millsboro, Delaware, it's where the Nanticoke community is. I was always taken there as a little kid, and I would see like these objects that my family were creating. And then I was actually named after my uncle. His name's Leonard Allen Harmon. He was on his way to being an important Indigenous artist, but he was taken away from us from AIDS in the mid 80s. So, being around that work so little as a kid, I was always drawn to what my family was doing. And it wasn't until much later in my life, I started practicing some of our traditional crafts, right? And that just put this fire inside of me to kind of continue on my family's work. So I think that's where it came out of me to push further as an artist.
Well, it's part of your DNA, part of your heritage, and I think it's in us without even knowing it's there sometimes.
Right. Yeah. Big time. Well, I would, in high school, I would never thought that I'd be creating art right now, that it's actually being collected. I never thought that I would be doing this.
Well, you were born in Philly, raised in Delaware and DC. How did those cities shape your sense of identity and creativity?
I grew up on the suburbs of Washington, DC. And I was actually talking to a friend about this earlier. When I was in school, and we were, our normal field trips would be for school all the time we go to DC,
right.
And go to all the different Smithsonians. And at that time, the American Indian Museum didn't exist. It didn't exist until 2004,
right.
So all during school, I was in this area of things of the past, things weren't of today. Everything that we would go and look at is like the Indigenous person is gone.
Right.
They don't exist anymore. And with my work now, I think that's what I'm trying to show, is that we are still here today. And that it was the same thing in Philadelphia. When my mom would take me to museums in Philly, it was kind of like the same thing. The only art that you would really see is of this gentleman. The shirt that I'm wearing right now is Rick Barteau. That was like some of the only work I remember seeing as a younger kid. Yeah, so it shaped me because, like, once again, it's put this drive in me that, the people of the Eastern Seaboard, that those tribal nations are still around, and that's what I'm trying to show in my work is, that we're still here today. So that's kind of how those cities kind of drove this force into me, that, we're still here today. We're still kicking and thriving in our communities. So.
Yep. And we're still evolving as a people, as our culture and everything else. Just because of first contact doesn't mean we were just like, "Phew, okay, you're done."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, your practice spans traditional crafts, powwow dancing, and contemporary mixed media. What connects all these expressions for you?
I think for dance, that's kind of how it started for me. As, as a young kid, my favorite movie, this is going to sound crazy, was Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo. It was my favorite movie, hands down. My mom said that I couldn't get enough of it. If we went to the video store, that's what I was renting. I was renting nothing else, you know? Um, and I think it was seeing, because if you've ever watched the movie before, it's people of all these different races like dancing, you know?
Mhm.
And I thought that was so cool as a kid that it didn't stick to a certain race, that this dance belonged to, it belonged to everybody,
Right.
right? So, I was really drawn into like the hip hop and b-boying scene. And I got put into a crew that's very well known, called TBB, the Bronx Boys Rockin' Crew, and they're actually the originators of the dance in 1974. Um, and so that history, I was really drawn to it, because me growing up in an urban area, and not having anybody like me around except for my parents,
Mhm.
I didn't have that culture to latch on to as much
Right.
as I did for being in an urban space, um but come to find out, I had relatives, indigenous relatives within my own crew that I didn't even know. It's like,
Hmm.
so there's a young lady, she goes by Lunacy. Her name is Angela. She dances for a tribe called Red, or Haluska Nation, as they call themselves now. Uh, and to know that we shared the same thing of being indigenous people, and we practiced the same dance that we did. And plus, we were practicing our powwow dancing too. I felt like this connection of just of being something, or
Mhm.
part of something,
Right.
something that was important then in my eyes. So I think I grabbed a little bit from each of like aspect to like build who I am today. I guess
Right.
that's the best way to put it. That's a hard question to answer, pulling from certain different cultures and everything, and then
Right.
mixing it into your style.
Right.
uh I guess it comes out in my art too, because I have a lot of I wouldn't say like the graffiti look,
Mhm.
but there I use a lot of materials that you would use in the hip hop culture, to create my work.
Well, your work is mixed. I mean, in your mixed media work, you often explore themes of cultural tradition and social justice. What drives you to speak through those subjects?
I think it's my personal
Mhm.
experience as growing up. I went to culinary school in Charleston, South Carolina, uh, and I dealt with quite a bit of racism there. And then once again, growing up in a place where nobody looked like me,
Right.
I dealt with a lot of pushback, and even pushback within my own community as well, because I was that urban Indian kid. I didn't grow up in my community and everything. So um I think it was a lot of things that were just harbored down
Mhm.
inside of me. And that social justice, that we're all indigenous people of in this continent, and we're all have a relation. uh yeah, I think that's what drives through the I think I still have a little something harbored down inside of me that just peeks its head out every once in a while in my work.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Well, do you approach painting the same way you approach movement as rhythm, or do they come from separate emotional places?
They come from definitely separate emotional places.
Mhm.
I always feel this, people say I'm crazy for saying this, but like my uncle was like guiding my hands. you know I
Mhm.
had like this strong relationship with him while he was around. So no, those two are separate for me when it comes to like uh, hip hop dance, powwow traditional dancing, and in my art. Those
Mhm.
are those are two different routes, two different aspects of my life. So I don't think I've ever tried to mix the two together, but that's something that
Never
maybe,
say never.
yeah, maybe.
Well, you're known for your woodland style on the Powwow Trail. Can you describe the feeling that you get when you dance?
Who as a kid, being that the Nanacook people have kind of lost their ways a little bit, you know, my family, even back until like the 90s, were very stuck in the 70s and 80s, when it came to the way that they danced. And it was only like a handful of us boys that wanted to bring back that old look and that old style. Um, so we took it upon ourselves to like research certain garb or regalia uh, to try to be as close to the period as the style that we were dancing. So at the time when I first started dancing woodland, I was dancing post contact.
Mhm.
And then some of my friends were dancing pre contact. So all the stuff that they were wearing was all leather goods. They were all hand woven items. Um, and it made me feel like a reconnection to my people before the 1900s, and things that they would have wore at that time. So I had this like strong relationship with like making these certain items and trying to bring them back within my community, to get them out of that 1990s 80s thought of what you should be wearing.
Right.
So yeah, I just had this deep relationship with the old ways of making things at that time.
Mhm.
Especially when it comes to my quill work. That's like you know, woodland and quill work go kind of hand in hand, and it goes hand in hand with a
True.
lot of tribal communities as well. So, um, yeah.
Well, you're self-taught, but clearly deeply rooted in tradition. How do you balance honoring your past with innovating for the future?
So like this piece that I have here on the wall, me and Holly Wilson are planning on being on the show together within the next 2 years. Um, and the idea was bandolier bags, right? So she
Mhm.
has this piece that she's working on, of her daughter in this bandolier bag. And then I'm working on a oversized bandolier bag that's about 7 foot by 8 foot
Oh, wow.
tall.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a little
and
oversized.
so it's, yeah, I'd say it's oversized. I just right now, I think I'm trying to mix a lot of traditional items into contemporary work.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I haven't even mixed the two together
No?
really like that yet. I've kept in everything pretty separate as far as traditional work and then my contemporary work. So I have not really even played with that idea as far as this,
Right.
about trying to even mix the two even together. Um, I've kept everything separate. I have two separate studios. I have one studio strictly for quill work, one studio strictly for painting. Um, yeah, I hope I answered that question
No, you
correctly.
did, you did, you did. So, since you do have the 2 studios, when do you know that something takes precedent on the other side versus what you're working on? Do they mix where you wanna do something painting wise, but it actually is gonna be applied to your quill work just because of the technique or the artistry, or it's just gonna be interpreted more clearly to what's in your head?
I'm a heavy dreamer, big time heavy dreamer. Um, I get on these tangents where like I I feel like I have to be in the studio like 3 weeks in the paint studio. I've got to be creating work in this studio for 3 weeks. Then I've got to go to the other studio for 3 weeks. Um, I think it really depends on the project, right?
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm really kind of known in the powwow world for making quill work for dancers. Um, and then I have a small section where there's museums that are starting to collect bigger pieces of work of quill work from me. Um, so I think it really depends on the project and how I'm feeling at that moment. I usually, when I'm like down in my feelings, I try not to touch quill work because I have that. I was taught that each one of those quills is a person, so you're
Mm.
dealing with a person every single time, and a different person every time you pick up a different quill. So I try not to be very emotional when I'm working with those items because things can
Mm-hmm.
start happening, like quills can start popping and everything. So when I'm in my feels, as they say, I do most of that work here in painting. That's when I let my emotions really out. So when I'm doing my quill work, I'm somewhere completely else, that emotions aren't involved with the quill work.
What's one piece you've created that feels the most personal or vulnerable for you or to you?
So there's a piece of my uncle's that's at the Hearst Museum in Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
that they have in their collection, and it's a sculpture that he did. It's called Karma Burner. And recently, within the past couple of years, I got to go to the Hearst Museum and spend some time with that piece. And I was really like really emotionally connected to it because I felt him through the piece. So when I got back here, after seeing that work, I created this piece called Fences. And it's a sculpture. It's not mimicking his, but it's the mimicking the idea. This piece sculpture that he had lit up from the inside,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it looked like a kind of like an Aztec temple of some sort, but it had light behind rice paper behind it. So I had this idea of trying to honor that piece of my uncle's work, So I did this piece called Fences, and it has light up LED lighting behind it that lights it up in a certain pattern on the wall.
Right.
I've only got to show it one time, but I think that's the piece that I had the most feels for because it connects with my uncle's work, and in time I would like to be able to show it next to my uncle's piece.
What do you hope someone sees or feels when they stand in front of your work?
That's a hard question. I don't. I kind of don't want them to feel anything.
No?
I kind of want them to feel a little bit empty, maybe, you know, because I feel that my work is trying to tell a story, and it's not a good story, you know. Um, so maybe feel a little bit empty inside,
Mhm.
and that painting or that piece can make them put something else in them instead of their normal way they would think about indigenous art, you know. Um,
Mhm.
Once again, like because when I was growing up, I thought indigenous art was beadwork, some
Yep.
feathers, because that's
Yep.
what I saw. That's what I saw at the museums in
Yeah,
DC.
yeah. The
It
representation
wasn't
there.
till wasn't until I was already out of school until I started seeing paintings by
Mhm.
indigenous artists, and yeah, empty. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I want you to feel emotional after the fact,
After.
not while looking at.
Has storytelling always been a part of your creative expression even before the formal art came to be?
No, not really.
Mm.
I wasn't told very much as a kid. Everything was kept kind of secret.
Hmm.
you know. Um, so I didn't have a whole lot of stories to even really go off of, except for little small things within my family, like jokey, and native humor things,
Hmm.
But I think my family kept everything under wraps for a very, very long time because they had to assimilate to where they were. Um, so no, I think the storytelling doesn't come until much, much later. Um, and it's me doing my research, you know. I think now a lot of people, which me and a few of my friends are starting to do, is um, talking to elders and trying to record the stories,
Good.
so they can be told later
Right.
on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's an important factor because they're the ones that are the keepers of who we've been and where we've been.
yeah, definitely. Lucky enough, I live in another community right now. I live on the Confederated Tribe of Siletz, in Siletz, Oregon.
Mm.
So, and this is also a fishing community, just like the community that I'm from. So, luckily, I do get to hear some stories about the community that I live in right now.
What materials do you feel most connected to when creating and why?
Uh, I actually I had a panel about this the other day. I was sitting with I had a panel with Professor Scott Stevens, Syracuse University, and he asked me the same question
Oh, really?
about what materials I like to use, and I told him straight up, I like to use things that you left behind.
Hmm.
So discarded materials, being discarded wood, discarded paint, anything I can get my hands on, I will use within my work. I was always told by an elder of mine that if we had it, we'd have used it,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
True.
anything that I can get my hands on, I'll use. There's no medium that I'm scared of at all. I'll work a medium until I get good at it. It's time to move to the next one and then keep working at it until I can get good at it.
That's very
So
true.
yeah,
We.
any go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just said yeah, anything I can get my hands on, old books, whatever.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, in your experience, what's the biggest misconception people have about Native artists?
That were inferior
Mm.
to art, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the most thing that I didn't go to art school, you know. Does that make me inferior to art? You know, I don't
Mm.
know. I don't think so. you know,
Yeah.
um, and that's I think that's how a lot of native artists feel. Especially in some group shows. I think some of them feel that way. Especially some of my friends, that they don't feel they're as good as the rest of the artists. You know, uh, Yeah, I think that's the best way I could that I'm just speaking on my personal, on
Mm-hmm.
how I feel about that maybe
Yeah.
I'm
Well said.
inferior to it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That perception of, and yeah. Well, what role does community play in your process and practice?
Um well, in the community that I live in now, there's a bunch of younger artists here that are trying to
Mm-hmm.
make names for themselves. And so we hang out a lot, being that I'm an artist that's trying to, being an emerging artist and get bigger in the art world. Um, I think us working all together as a group um, gives us a sense of momentum to like put ourselves out there. I think a lot of my small group is we're afraid to step out there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's that, and then doing the things like small things. Well, it's not small things, but helping elders chop wood. It's little things like that. Um, I
Hmm.
think betters me as a person and an artist, you know. Um, yeah, that's the I think that's what community is all about, is
True.
working
Yeah, very
together,
true.
you know.
Hmm.
And that's why I love where I live right now, because it's a very involved community, and they're always helping each other and cutting each other's grass and help carry heavy things for elders. It's communities is the most important thing to me.
Fantastic. Hey, I got some grass needs to be cut. Where do you turn for inspiration when your creative tank feels low?
So there's some pictures that a gentleman named Frank Speck took back between 1910 and 1914 in our community. That's on the Smithsonian of American Indians, their archival page on the internet. And there's countless pictures of Nanticoke people in there, and I
Mm,
think that's where I get a lot of it from. Is when I'm always feeling down, like, oh, I can't do this right now. Like, I can't quill right now. I can't paint right now. I'll go back and look at those pictures and look at like all those men fishing and everything. And I was like, man, those guys didn't, they did this every day. They didn't have that. We're like, oh, I can't do it today, you know? So, and
right.
I think that inspires me to be like, you know what? I can do this today. Like those men could do it back then. I can do it right now. Just not watch the TV, not focus on what's going on in the world, and try to
Right.
focus on what's going on right here in my studio. That's where
Hmm.
I get a lot of inspiration from, is from those photos. I can go back and look at
Well,
them hundreds and hundreds of times over again.
well, what excites you most right now, whether in your work or in the wider art world? Excuse me.
Oh, you're fine. I think what's exciting me right now is I recently just got back from Stockholm, Sweden, where I had that talk with Professor Scott Stevens at the Ethnographic
Hmm.
Museum of Stockholm. Um, and they have a lot of my family's items that go back to my great great grandfather. So they have a bunch of our fishing nets. They have some mortar and pestles, um, netting shuttles. They have
Hmm.
quite a bit of really cool things that like connect straight to my family. So right now, as of right now, I'm like recreating those fishing nets again. And there's nobody in my community that still practices this. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's what I'm the most drawn to right now, is these things from the past and trying to reproduce them today. Um, and then going out there with my family or some of my buddies from here, and trying to reuse those items exactly how they were used back then. Um,
Right.
yeah, that I've got this need for recreating these old items again.
If you could only describe your work in 3 words, what would it be?
That's a hard question. Um, I like these questions. These series of questions are really they're good. They're really good. mm, Alive, thought provoking.
Hmm.
Hmm. I'll leave it at those two. I don't think I have
Yeah,
a
I'm gonna
third
with
one.
just.
I don't think I'm gonna
Uh,
leave it those two.
okay, that worked.
Yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
fair. Yeah,
I'll go with that.
yeah.
I'll let you slide by. You've lived in a lot of places. How does your sense of home show up in your work?
I think it's just now starting to happen. Is my sense of
Hmm.
home is showing up in my work. In my earlier work, I was still trying to find out who I was as an artist, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but with some of my newer works, I'm involving a lot of images from my direct family and my community. So obviously the normal viewer wouldn't know that, with looking at it. You'd have to have some type of description next to it, but when my direct family sees it, they know who those people are and
Mm.
what I'm trying to say to everyone, so maybe my work is not meant for everyone. Maybe it's meant for the people in my community to relift them up again.
Hmm. So, Leonard, what's next for you? What's coming up? What's exciting? What do you got on the horizon?
I have a show opening July 18th at the Lincoln City Cultural Arts Center in Lincoln City, Oregon. I have the show at I have I'm curating a show at 21C Hotel Museums for Indigenous Peoples Day, with conjunction with the Cincinnati Contemporary Fine Arts Museum. I have some pretty big names in that show this year, including Holly Wilson, Kanupa Luger. Um,
Mm.
I have Don Bailey within the show, and we have some traditional basket weavers as well in that show this year. Um, as of now, those are like the two main things that I've got going on for this year. Always something seems to pop up
Fantastic.
here and there, but as of now, that's what I've
Right.
got going on. Yeah.
Something's always around the corner that unexpected. What are you most surprised about as you took this journey that you didn't know, or surprised about that you learned about yourself?
That I'm pretty decent at most mediums. I'm really surprised that I'm able to achieve everything that when I sit down and do it, that I'm able to achieve it. I've um
Hmm.
I've learned a lot about myself about that not being scared is is one of my strong suits, is just not being scared of doing something. um and I've learned a lot about my personal self. I'm not afraid to say it. I've been sober for quite a few years now, and none of this would have happened without getting sober, period.
Hmm.
That is, and I think that's been a big
Congrats to you.
downfall for a lot of our communities. We
Hmm.
have a lot of artistic people in a lot of our communities, and there's something that's holding them back. And
Right.
that's what was holding me back, was drinking and drugging.
Hmm.
So with getting sober, gave me the sense of clarity that I can do these things and not being afraid to do it.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Well, congrats to you.
thank you.
If your if your art could speak to your ancestors or your uncle, what do you think it would say?
Get back to work. Keep
Stop doing this
working.
damn.
um I think my uncle would be very proud of me today, because I'm getting myself pretty far. um
Mhm.
and my voice is starting to be heard in about my community. So I think he'd be very proud of me today, and then he's right behind me. And once again, the gentleman, the shirt that I'm wearing, Mr. Rick Barteau, is
Mhm.
I draw a lot of inspiration from him. Me and his son are best friends, and I spent a lot of time at the Rick Barteau home where he created all of his works. And then yeah, I love art. I love indigenous art. Yeah.
Well, that's an important factor there. That absolutely. Well, Leonard, is there anything else you'd like to share with us or tell us about your work, your creativity?
I think you've hit everything pretty well. I think we didn't dig too deep into my personals. We so that's No, I think
Just the surface.
yeah, I really appreciate you guys reaching out to me and allowing me to be on your show and speak a little bit about my work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, what do you hope to achieve as you continue this journey and creating your art in various forms,
Right.
from dance to everything? What is it that you hope to achieve at the end of your path?
I've said this a few times to a few different people. Once, okay, two things. I want to have a show with my uncle, just a show, me and him. All right. And showing us
Hmm.
together, the differences between us, but also the connection between us. And that's the first thing. And both of them have to do with my uncle. So the second thing is once I have a piece next to my uncle's at the Heard Museum, I've achieved my goals. That
Fantastic. Well,
those are
you've let you've let
my
it
two major goals.
you've let it out to the world now, so now it will be.
Hey, I just got to put it out there, and then hopefully, in time
Absolutely.
that it'll come to be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Leonard, it's been a pleasure to meet you and have you on our show. Thank you for taking the time, and much, much continued success to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
From breakbeats to brushstrokes, Leonard Harmon reminds us that tradition isn't static, it's alive, it moves, and it speaks through us. His work challenges, honors, and moves with the pulse of 1,000 steps that came before. To follow more on Leonard's journey, check out his work online and keep up with his performances and exhibitions. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for Beyond the Art, where stories of Indigenous creativity are just getting started. We are deeply grateful to the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture for their generous support and contributions to making this episode possible, and for their commitment to uplifting Indigenous artists and traditions.